So it's super empty, but I'm very lucky to be able to have a pretty big room rented out with my friends. And here is the setup for now until we figure something out and get it a little more finished. But for now, we can see that we have our whole regular setup and an extra gift from our friends over at BenQ who sent me this ScreenBar Plus e-reading lamp. So I'm gonna get that set up right now and show you why it helps a lot, especially in the setup. So if you guys catch my Twitch, you know that I'm streaming really late night, and in the late night, there's not many ideal lighting conditions, especially if I'm going to be staring at the screen with this really big monitor, and I've got this desk space that I mostly do all of my music on. And so this lamp is super easy to use. All you have to do is just control it with this one-click button. I can get great lighting conditions on my laptop and on my desk without compromising with glare, and especially with all the different controls. So here you can see I can adjust the tone of the light depending on the situation I need it for, and just with one button I can set it to automatic brightness, as well as being able to control the brightness myself. And so this really helps, and it was an unexpected grab for me. I don't even need to plug it into actual wall plug. It just goes straight into USB, which is super helpful, especially considering how many plugs I use for my whole entire setup. And so with that being said, I wanted to continue with the rest of my setup. I got the Neumann KH120As. I got the fake IKEA plants because I can't bring myself to take care of a proper plant. I got my MacBook 16-inch. I got the Apollo Twin, as well as the Cloud Lifter to plug into my SM7B, and of course my Alesis V61. Currently, I'm in the process of building some sound panels. I got some insulation, I got some 2x4s, and I'm ready to do that. So without further ado, let's just get into this initial video. So in this video today, I wanted to talk and elaborate on my bass processing. As many of you know, I use a lot of one-shots for my bass rather than sound designing my own bass. It obviously depends on the time, but personally I find that I have a lot of versatility when I use a bass one-shot and then shape it afterwards. This helps me establish a tone and then tune it into my own personal preferences. So let me just give you an example here. So if I have a bass one-shot, I usually keep a bunch of them up here for some use where I can preview them. And so if I have a simple bass such as this one, it sounds pretty good. However, there are artifacts left over, as well as when Ableton warps them, there is some different tones that come through that may necessarily not be favorable. And so with that, I always like processing a bass just because I want to make sure it's clean, because when you're resampling a one shot, sometimes the tones might not come out as clean as if you're making it in something like Massive or Serum. What we can do with this is begin by adding some things that I like to use. And so what I like to do commonly is use Guitar Rig. So Guitar Rig is a plugin I got with Complete, and this plugin helps me as a bass amplifier. So it mimics a bass amplifier and it undergoes a lot of processing on the bass. And so the reason why this is important is that this processing is undergone after the bass one shot. So this bass one shot is already established, it already has all its tones, and now I edit it afterwards. And so in Guitar Rig, we can look at a bunch of different bass amplifiers. So if you can see, there's clean bass, which already just establishes more tones, DI bass, wide stereo bass, which makes it super, super stereo. And there's a whole bunch of different options to go through. And so, of course, this is often used when you're recording your own bass guitar into Ableton, but I like using it on different one-shots because it allows you to be unique and get some different ideas going. And so I'll walk you through my personal preferences. So what I like to use is the DI bass. So this applies a good amount of compression as well as a couple other effects. And so immediately you can tell the difference before and after. And so this makes it a little more mono. And so what I'm going to do here is have a new instance of Guitar Rig. And in that new instance, I'm going to go back to the Bass Amps Bass Pro and use the wide stereo bass. So these together help establish a wide stereo-ness. However, of course, the general rule when you're EQing bass, of course, you don't have to follow all the rules, is that there shouldn't be much stereo imaging in your bass. For me, I like to look into inspiration like Kaytranada, and you can tell there's a lot of stereo imaging on his bass. There are tricks you can do to make this and have an interesting effect while at the same time not overdoing it. So what I'm going to do here is parallel processing. So what that means is mixing whatever signal I have in parallel with the original signal before. But if we use Command G or Control G, you can create a chain here where one instance of guitar rig is in here and there's another one that's just blank. And so this blank one is your original. So you can tell it's our original by turning it off. It sounds the same. But now when we add the wide stereo bass, it's half mixed in with the original. And what you can do here is tone it down a little bit. Just by listening, it sounds quite loud. And already we have some very interesting tones. But of course, with that one rule of having the low sub frequencies applied to this stereo widener, what you can do is add an EQ before, as in to filter in the frequencies that come through. So if we turn everything off, including the clean signal, and just leave our process signal, and then put a low cut, you can see the signal that's coming into this chain is only what I allow it to be. And in my case, this is going to be the mid-high signal, so not that subby region that can potentially clash when it's in stereo. And so now we're only applying stereo widening to the mid-high rather than the whole signal, and we can begin to mix that in with our original. And so that sounds quite good in my opinion, but you can still hear some artifacts over from the end of the bass. And with one shots, you get a lot of that, especially depending on where it was sampled from. And so if you hear it's just in the tail, you can just fade this out, as well as add an EQ before all of this in order to avoid the high end being processed by all of these plugins. And overall, we have a very, very clean, wide bass signal that can be used for everything from a simple one shot. And so here, I like to just take a little bit of the mids out to give it that little bit of a cleaner signal. And there you go. There's an example with one bass and how we processed it. And now what we can do is put on a warp mode. So now you can tell that when I play it at a lower octave and a higher octave, the length of the note has changed because Ableton isn't warping it. So what it does is actually bring it closer together to make it play at a higher note, which ends up making it shorter. So we can use many of Ableton's warp features to help us out here. I like to use the beat warping. And so now you have a consistent length note. And so this applies to any one shot that you use in order to avoid any of the high notes being shorter than the low notes. And so what we can do is hear before and after. This is what it sounds like before. And this is what it sounds like after. And you can apply this with any bass. With this rack, I can save this and just apply this to any bass I like. So if we find one and then apply this rack to it, and we have a good bass. And this EQ and this rack allows us to tune it to our own liking. And so this gives you that versatility that you may not have in one shots and gives you a little bit more control. So you don't have to just stick with searching through many, many samples until you get the right sound. So let's look at this in the context of a song and see what it sounds like before and after. So here we have a song that we broke down a few videos ago. In specific, let's listen to the bass line. Of course, this bass line is very sparse. There's not many notes, so it's important that it cuts through immediately. And so you can see I have a shortened version of our previous chain on. Let's listen to what it sounds like before and after. This is what it sounds like before and after. So these changes are very subtle, and of course it's all up to personal preference, but in my style of production, I want the bass to cut through and be a main element rather than a supporting element. And you can take this and process it however much you like, use whatever you want, but especially with working with one-shots, it's important to establish your own personal style on it. So thank you for watching this short video, this short update. I promise I'll be making some more music, making some more videos, but for now you can catch me at my Twitch in the description. We have a lot of fun, we make a lot of music. You can catch us in the Discord. Again, thank you to BenQ, and I'll catch you guys next time.